Maybe someday we will have a robot president. You know, couldn't be worse than what we have right now, shortly after his wife gives birth. And he keeps saying, it was brought to his attention today that we're the only country that does mail-in voting. When is somebody going to step in and tell him that is not true? 34 countries have mail-in voting. All the countries that have mail-in voting. So here's where the real magic comes in. That was yesterday. Guess what he did today? That's right, he voted by mail today for the special election in Florida. He's unbelievable.
Jimmy Kimmel didn't just call out a small Trump contradiction and move on like it was another late-night joke. He really put a spotlight on someone who lies so often that he can't even keep up with his own story from one day to the next. And honestly, the deeper Kimmel got into Trump's Iran war comments, the non-stop spin, the propaganda, and how perfectly all of it seemed to distract people from the Epstein situation, the more uncomfortable it became to watch. At that point, it stopped feeling like some awkward political moment and started looking a lot more serious, like reckless behavior being wrapped up and sold as patriotism. What made it hit even harder was how Kimmel opened the whole thing with one simple line, and somehow, as the show went on, that comment stopped sounding like comedy and started sounding like a warning people were trying hard not to hear.
Maybe someday we will have a robot president. You know, couldn't be worse than what we have.
And honestly, Kimmel wasn't wrong. Because at least a robot would actually sit down and read the intelligence reports. A robot would remember what policies it was supporting the week before. A robot probably wouldn't wander into a war just to shift the headlines away from a sex trafficking scandal. But that's not what America has sitting in the Oval Office. It has Donald Trump, and Kimmel seemed completely ready to show people just how dangerous it is when someone can be both deeply impulsive and completely out of touch at the same time. What really stood out was that the first real crack in Trump's political image didn't even happen somewhere hostile to him. It happened in his own backyard, Palm Beach, home to Mar-a-Lago, the place where he crushed the competition not that long ago, and even there, voters suddenly turned around and rejected the candidate he backed.
Got a sneak peek at what might be in store for Team Trump come November at the elections. I mentioned last night, Mr. Ban Mail-in Voting voted by mail in a special election in Palm Beach. This is a district Trump won by double digits 2 years ago, and the district he lives in. But seems like maybe the magic is wearing off because last night, a Democrat, Emily Gregory, scored a major upset over a Republican that Trump endorsed. She won one solidly red seat in the state legislature, which is a real kick in the golf balls for Mar-a-Lago.
Seriously, just think about how wild that is for a second. Trump personally went all in on a candidate in his own district, gave him the full, complete, and total endorsement performance, talked about him like he was handpicked by destiny, and after all of that, the guy still lost. And not to another Republican or some random independent surprise candidate either, but to a Democrat in Florida, right in Trump's own backyard. That's the kind of political embarrassment you can't really explain away, no matter how loudly people try to spin it on television or pretend it means nothing.
Days ago, Trump said the Republican candidate, John Maples, had his complete and total endorsement and that John will never let you down. And he's right, he won't, because he's back to work as a financial planner. He lost the race. The idea that Trump voted by mail at the same time he's trying to ram this Save My Fat Orange Ass Act through Congress right now, which is a bill that would do away with mail-in ballots, has put leaders in the GOP in a bit of a pit.
Nobody's even exaggerating it either. They didn't call it election security or voter integrity or any of the usual political buzzwords. They literally called it Trump protection, and honestly, that alone tells you everything you need to know about what was really going on. And the funniest part in all of this is that Trump himself voted by mail, using the exact same system he constantly attacks and tries to limit for everyone else. But that's always how it works with him. The rules never seem to apply to Trump personally. They're for everybody else, while he operates under his own completely different set of standards and somehow expects nobody to notice the contradiction.
Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, was asked about this latest act of brazen hypocrisy and did a little tap dance around it.
President Trump has railed against mail-in voting as rigged. He said it's a form of cheating as recently as Monday. But in yesterday's special election in Florida, he voted by mail. How do you square those two statements?
Look, I think some states have handled mail-in balloting well. I think Florida is a good example of that. They don't allow fraud, and they have great systems. That is not true in other parts of the country, and that is the concern, especially in a state like California.
Right. You know, Florida, as we all know, is very buttoned down, very normal, whereas California, Oh, it's a madhouse. Listen, I've lived in both states. I've lived in Florida. I've lived in California. The only thing Florida does better is get manatees addicted to meth. All right? If you're looking to buy a hot dog from a woman in a G-string, Florida is the place you want to be. Otherwise, you're better off.
And what makes the whole thing even more unbelievable is that none of this is even exaggerated. Florida literally has marine life dealing with meth contamination from polluted water runoff. And somehow Mike Johnson is still out here talking like Florida is this flawless example of how everything should be run while California is supposedly some kind of collapsing disaster zone. So by their logic, the state with drugged up sea animals is the responsible one, but the state with the 5th largest economy in the world is complete chaos. That's not clever political messaging anymore. That's just pure delusion. And then Kimmel got to the part that really feels unsettling, the part that should genuinely make people nervous. Because Trump doesn't even seem to fully understand what's actually happening in the war he's involved in.
Largely because, according to NBC News, Trump gets a sizzle reel every day that only shows us attacking them. NBC said there's a daily montage. It typically runs for about 2 minutes, sometimes longer. He sees it every day. One official described the videos as a series of clips of stuff blowing up. And these video briefings are said to be fueling concerns among some of Trump's allies that he might not be receiving or absorbing the complete picture of the war. He's only seeing the positive stuff, which helps to explain why he keeps saying we already won the war that is still going.
Trump doesn't seem to get serious briefings the way an actual leader would. It feels more like he's being shown some flashy highlight reel, like clips from a reality show season finale. A couple minutes of explosions, dramatic footage, things blowing up everywhere, but no real conversation about casualties, no strategy, no discussion about what happens long-term or what the consequences could be. Just this over-the-top Michael Bay-style montage built to make him feel powerful and tough for a few minutes. And honestly, that's not what a commander-in-chief is supposed to look like. It looks more like a grown man being distracted and entertained like a toddler, basically handed cartoons to keep him calm so he doesn't throw a tantrum.
White House spokesman Caroline Leavitt released a statement pushing back on the story. She said anyone who has been present for conversations with President Trump knows he actively seeks and solicits the opinions of everyone in the room and expects full-throated honesty from all his top advisors. That sounds like him, right? I mean, this is the guy who said I know more about ISIS than all the generals. That's Donald. Very collaborative, Donald.
And honestly, the craziest part is that Trump actually said this stuff himself. This isn't satire, it's not some late-night comedy sketch, and it's not a joke somebody wrote for TV. This is real life, which somehow makes it even more unbelievable. So when his spokesperson gets on camera and says Trump welcomes different opinions, what that really seems to mean is he welcomes people telling him he's right. Because the second you stop agreeing with him, the second you stop feeding his ego and backing up whatever he wants to hear, you're out. Fired. Replaced by somebody else who will sit there clapping on command like a trained seal.
Every day, they're bringing him these fun little action movies of us blowing stuff up. Everyone's telling him how great he's doing. He's got 4 whole cable networks dedicated to kissing his ass 24/7. His staff is terrified to ever bring him any bad news, and he has the memory of a worm at the bottom of a bottle of mezcal. And this is the man in charge of sending our children to war, at least the ones whose dads don't have a good podiatrist to get them out of it. It's really something.
At this point, it doesn't even feel like an insult anymore. It feels like a genuinely serious observation, almost like people are watching a medical concern play out in public. Trump can't seem to remember his own policies, can't remember that he personally voted by mail while attacking mail-in voting for everyone else, and can't even keep track of the details of a war he brags about winning. And this is the same person making decisions that could send other people's children into combat. Obviously not his own kids, because Trump has always had a way out when things get difficult. Bone spurs kept him out of Vietnam, and wealth and privilege will probably keep his family far away from any danger involving Iran too. Meanwhile, everybody else's families end up being treated like disposable pieces in a game he doesn't personally have to suffer through. And the fallout from all of this goes way beyond American lives, because this war also ended up damaging America's relationships and alliances around the world.
That is another consequence of this war in Iran. The president's former pen pal, Kim Jong-un, says the lesson that he's learned is that you can't trust the sweet talk from the U.S. And as a result, he says he's going to make sure North Korea's nuclear status is irreversible. So I guess Trump wrote all those love letters for no reason at all. And to really rub it into his pumpkin face, Kim Jong-un was just reelected to a 3rd term with 99.93% of the vote. The other 0.07% are dead. They're deceased now.
Trump was out there writing friendly letters to dictators, calling them his friends, talking like he had some unique connection with them that nobody else could understand, and now Kim Jong-un seems to have learned the exact opposite lesson from all of it, that America under Trump can't really be trusted. So now North Korea's nuclear program feels basically permanent at this point, locked in, irreversible, and impossible to stop. That's the legacy people are talking about here. Not peace, not stability, but a stronger and more dangerous nuclear threat than before. And somehow, as bad as that already sounds, it gets even more unsettling when you look at the Secretary of Defense, because he seems like somebody who has completely lost grip on what's actually happening.
And see, Pete is fired up.
The president has made it clear that you will not have a nuclear weapon. The War Department agrees. Our job is to ensure that. And so we're keeping our hand on that throttle as long as hard as is necessary to ensure the interests of the United States of America are achieved.
That's the moment the Cialis kicked.
Just look closely at him for a second. Watch his eyes, watch the way his words start to drag, how his pacing slows down like he's trying to push his way through a mental fog. It almost feels like you can see this medicated haze settling in while he's standing there talking. And this is the person giving a press conference about nuclear war, looking completely checked out in the middle of it. That doesn't feel like leadership at all. It feels more like a weekend at Bernie's situation, except the person in charge is the one holding the launch codes. And then on top of that, you've got the negotiation team, the same group Trump sent out there supposedly to clean up and fix the war that he helped spark in the first place.
Iranians have said they will not accept Jared Kushner or Trump's special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, as negotiators. The Iranians have a nickname for Jared. They call him the sorrowful broomstick, which sounds better in Farsi, and it's weird that the Iranians don't want to negotiate with Trump's son-in-law, whose primary job experience before this was holding Ivanka's purse. It seems very unfriendly. They want J.D. Vance to be the point person on top.
Iran apparently even has a nickname for Jared Kushner, and it's not exactly respectful. They're not intimidated by him, they're not impressed, they basically just laugh at him, because from their perspective his entire qualification for Middle East negotiations comes down to being married into Trump's family and kind of just hanging around in the background. That's the image they're going with, like he's just there holding his wife's purse and tagging along more than anything else. And that's basically it, that's the whole resume. So in their eyes, they'd rather deal with someone who can't even handle something as simple as ordering a donut without struggling, than take him seriously as a negotiator in something as serious as Middle East politics.
Lives of millions of people are now in the hands of a man who struggled to order a donut. And whatever the outcome, the president has been very successful, you have to admit, in changing the narrative from the Trump-Epstein files to the war. There's been very little in the way of repercussions, in this country at least, for the many men who socialized with Epstein and did business with him, including one of his former lawyers, Epstein pal and Trump sycophant Alan Dershowitz.
And that brings us to J.D. Vance, the vice president, suddenly being treated like the main guy for peace talks, which already feels almost like satire on its own. But Kimmel's real point was a lot darker than just the personnel. Because in his framing, this war isn't only a foreign policy disaster, it's also a distraction, a giant smoke bomb meant to pull attention away from Epstein, away from the files, and away from the accusations and evidence suggesting Trump knew more about what was happening with those girls than he ever admitted. The idea being that this wasn't really about national security at all, but about shifting the conversation, and the worst part is that it actually worked. While everyone was looking elsewhere, the fallout started hitting regular people in a very real way, especially on the economic side, where the damage began showing up fast and hitting hard.
I have to give them points for imagination. According to the New York Times, in some states, gas prices have now jumped more than 30% over the last 2 weeks. And according to the White House, no, they haven't. But what happened to all that oil we got from Venezuela? I thought we were going to be swimming in it. And on top of that, the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz is preventing imports of nitrogen, which is a key ingredient in the fertilizer American farmers need to grow crops, to grow our food. The price of fertilizer has skyrocketed since the war started.
And now you've got gas prices jumping around 30%, fertilizer costs shooting up, food supply pressure building, and people feeling it in real time at the pump and in the grocery store. That kind of spike isn't something you can just wave away, even if the White House tries to act like it's not happening or suggests people are imagining it. At that point it stops being normal political spin and starts sounding like straight-up denial of what everyone is actually experiencing. Meanwhile, Trump's narrative about Venezuela stepping in with oil and everything suddenly balancing out just never really shows up in reality. And that's the problem, people keep pointing to. Those promises about instant relief or oil flooding the market don't match what's actually happening on the ground. In practice, the war has clearly pushed energy prices higher, with analysts linking the disruption in supply routes like the Strait of Hormuz to rising global oil costs and the ripple effects hitting consumers directly. PolitiFact 1. So when officials talk like everything will snap back quickly or that outside oil will magically fix it, it clashes hard with what people are already paying every day. And that gap between the message and reality is exactly where all the frustration is coming from.
The Trump administration is shelling out $1 billion of our money to a French energy company to cancel construction of wind turbines in North Carolina and New York. He's paying this company to not build these renewable energy farms because he has this weird hatred of what he calls windmills. He says they're unsightly, they're ugly monsters, they're losers, a con job, they're bad for the environment, and they make a lot of noise, which is exactly how most of us feel about him.
And then you've got this absurd cherry on top. $1 billion not going toward infrastructure, not going toward helping Americans directly, but instead being used to block wind turbines from being built, all because Trump thinks they look ugly. He talks about them like they're some kind of bad art project, calling them ugly monsters, losers, a con job, like he's judging an installation instead of dealing with actual national policy. And Kimmel's punchline, which honestly just mirrors how a lot of people react hearing this kind of thing, doesn't even land as comedy anymore. It feels more like a real-time psychological projection, where the way he talks says more about the mindset behind it than anything else.
The president, there was some major progress yesterday thanks to a mysterious gift.
You think I trust them? I don't trust them.
Why bother talking to them?
Because they're going to make a deal. They're going to make a deal. They did something yesterday that was amazing, actually. They gave us a present, and the present arrived today. And it was a very big present worth a tremendous amount of money. And I'm not going to tell you what that present is, but it is a very significant prize. And they gave it to us, and they said they were going to give it, so that meant one thing to me: would deal with the right people.
At the end of the day, Jimmy Kimmel didn't really embarrass Donald Trump. Trump managed to do that on his own. Kimmel just put it on record, night after night, laying out the pattern of lie after lie, contradiction after contradiction, and one reckless decision stacked on top of the next. At one point, Trump even floated the idea of a robot president someday, and Kimmel's response to that was brutally simple: it probably couldn't be worse than what we already have. And the longer time goes on, the more that line stops sounding like a joke and starts feeling like something a lot more uncomfortable, almost like the kind of depressing truth people didn't think they'd actually end up taking seriously.